Live on Building in Public today with Bobby Pinero from Equals. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Misty.
So first question, I'm going to get right to it. I noticed on your LinkedIn that you did this bicycle across the US thing.
Blast from the past, yeah.
That was 2008. And I'm trying to remember if this could have been an overlapping year, but did you ever run into Samir Sharif?
I did not, no.
Okay, he's a friend of ours and former guest from Building in Public, working on a company called Cambly, and he also did almost nearly what looks like that same bike ride, right around that same time, maybe within a year or two of you. So what is that all about? Tell me about it. Yeah.
Well, okay, so 2008, that was one of the coolest trips of my life. So I basically, there's a program called Bike and Build, and it's a community of really, I think, college-age students that are excited about both the opportunity to bike across the country and also to impact communities that are struggling with kind of like affordable housing, things like that. So the bike is the bike part, and the build is you actually go and like build houses across all the different places where you stop or where you bike across the country. And the story behind me wanting to do that was, so the summer before, I'd actually had this pretty nasty, massive reconstructive surgery on my knee. And I remember just sitting at home all summer, and I was watching the Tour de France, and I just remember watching these guys on their bikes, biking over the Alps, and I was like,
right.
I would give anything to be doing that right now, as opposed to lying here with like this cast on my leg. And so then I found this program, Bike and Build. I was like, next summer, I know what I'm doing. I'm biking across the country, and I found this program and met, it's like 25 or 30 strangers on the internet, and we started to plan the trip out. And by next summer, hopped on a bike, and I'd never ridden more than like 30 miles on a bike ever before. And the first day was like 60 miles go.
Wow.
And then, 9 weeks later, went from New Hampshire to Vancouver on a bicycle.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the muscles you use for cycling across the country have at least some overlap with some of the muscles you'd use to construct a home.
Yes, sort of. Although, you just... yeah, we did. I mean, we just did all sorts of crazy, it was cool. It was like we laid a foundation of a house, we set a roof, we put up walls, we painted. I'm 33 now, and when I did that, I was, 20 or so? I can't imagine 9 weeks. Of
The days of your youth.
Exactly. There were mornings you would get on the bike, and you're just like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this next 80 miles. But, I think one of the things that I take from that, that's still with me is, you can, if you show up consistently every day and just, tackle what's in front of you, you can actually, at the end of a surprisingly not long period of time, you can end up with something incredible, which is really what that trip was. It was 9 weeks of every day showing up, getting on the bike, taking it 10, 20 miles at a time, getting through that. And, 9 weeks later, you actually have something really cool to show for it.
Was there ever a time during that ride where you're like, okay, this is not going to work. We gotta cut it.
Oh yeah.
Were you like planning escape? Like, okay, if I could take a flight out of St. Louis, then maybe.
I remember we were in, we were probably like a week into the trip, maybe. We were in like upstate New York, and I mean, this was like also when I was probably in just the least shape of the trip. And I remember looking at the map, and you look at the map, right? And you're like, okay, here's where we are. And I remember just being so tired. Your things hurt that aren't supposed to hurt if you spend that much time on a bicycle. And I was just like, there's no way I'm going to get through this. There's no way. And again, it comes back to that lesson. It's like, no, just show up every day and do the little kind of, do the task in front of you. And, again, you'd be surprised at what you're capable of. And then there were crazy days where we ended up in storms and freezing cold weather, and again, but you had to make it because we had all our plans lined up. We knew where we were going to stay. We knew where we were going to sleep, and you just have to go. And you do it. And
yep.
It was pre-iPhone days too. So you're like, we would print out the directions, and then on the road you'd write chalk for people before. So you'd take out a piece of chalk and you'd say, everybody turn right here. And you didn't have a way to stay up to date on like where you were. And so there were some days you'd take the wrong turn and you'd go 20 miles and you'd have to come back those 20 miles.
Yep.
No.
It's amazing how the iPhone and maps and GPS are so ubiquitous. It's hard to even remember what life was like before. But I did a minor version of this. I did a solo cycling trip from San Francisco to Mexico.
Cool.
And when I summed the whole thing up at the end, I think I'd like ridden an extra 100 miles that I didn't need to ride over what's only, I don't know, was it 600 or 700 mile distance, just because we didn't have GPS. We didn't have phones that could tell us where we are or where we should be going.
And yet there's no better way to, I'm sure you experienced this in your trip. There's no better way to like get to know an area, get to know people, get to just like mile by mile, you're in it. It was awesome. It was a very formative experience for me.
Yeah. So it seems like that idea of kind of starting something ambitious and, wanting to give up, but knowing that you can kind of make it by kind of just pushing and making progress each day certainly seems to apply, to bicycle riding as well as entrepreneurship. So
totally. Yeah. Lots of lessons from Intercom in that, lots of lessons so far at Equals in that, lots of lessons in my personal life for that. So
yeah,
totally.
And it looks like you've probably been heavily involved in spreadsheets from the very beginning, right? Like being an analyst right out of college and then building out the team at Intercom. Were like, I don't know, what was that each step that you transitioned? How were you when did you start thinking about like, these are major gaps that like someone needs to build something for?
Yeah. So, I mean, our whole thing is like, we actually love spreadsheets. That's like the premise behind Equals, is that actually real business insight happens in spreadsheets as opposed to kind of any other tool out there. And there are a lot of tools right now that are popping up that are trying to kill the spreadsheet and abstract it away and give you some other form of thing that's supposed to, take the place of your spreadsheet. And we kind of reject all of that. We say, like, we actually love the spreadsheet, and there's a reason why it's been around for 30, 40 years. There's a reason why people build their careers off of knowing how to use spreadsheets. There's a reason why, it's arguably the world's most popular programming language. And so we don't want to take the spreadsheet away from anyone. We just want to give them a more awesome spreadsheet. And so that's what we're kind of working on. And it's funny because I started my career at IBM, which was a really interesting experience. I mean, a great place, I think, to start your career as somebody coming out of college and just not really knowing kind of how to use a spreadsheet, for example, or how to even send an email or how to put together a presentation. They teach you a lot of that, the basics there, and kind of you just like learn that kind of, I guess, business acumen may be the right term for it. But in a lot of other ways, right, IBM is a 400,000 person company, and you learn a lot about the type of place you don't want to work. But as much as like that experience was, like really learning like not what I didn't like, a huge company. The idea for Equals actually was like first spark there, and I didn't even know it. And it was because of this tool that I used in a spreadsheet. It was in Excel. It was this little tool, this Oracle tool called Essbase. And it was just this little magical experience that I would have every day in my spreadsheet that would import all this data for me in this like magical way. And without even realizing it, like that was actually like the first kind of seed that got planted for the idea for Equals. And then, I went on to work at a couple different startups, Intercom being the most successful and the most recent one. And, it just kind of a lot of my ideas for Equals were kind of tested and I guess kind of just like born in my time at Intercom, running the teams that I did there.
And so when thinking about spreadsheets, I think, probably a natural high level view skeptic might say, okay, Excel has been around for 40 years, Lotus 1, 2, 3 and stuff before that, and then I think that was sort of the single player siloed version. So those are pretty good. And now sort of Google Sheets has been around 10, 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
And so the collaborative spreadsheet is kind of taken off and it's got its own reason for being and direction. But then that's sort of the high level view. It sounds like you're saying we're starting at this thing called S-Base that was delightful. And so help us understand why that high level view is not the right way to think about it, and what kind of learning and insight S-Base gives you about sort of what the future of spreadsheets should look like.
Yeah, well, so the way I kind of think about it is, the spreadsheet. So how do I think about it? So the spreadsheet for me is what we're trying to solve for is a combination of a couple of different things that are happening in the world right now. One is there's a explosion of different SaaS applications and different tools and different data sources that companies use to manage their business and to understand their business. And those have been fundamentally kind of disconnected from the spreadsheet. So that anytime that you want to start an analysis, anytime that you want to do something, anytime you want to work, anytime you want to build an analysis, refresh it, recreate it, it's all kind of disconnected from the data sources that you're actually trying to build. And so that's one big area where we think there's an opportunity to kind of innovate and create something new and create something that's actually way more integrated into the way that analysis gets done. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, I think you're right. I think Google Sheets did open the door for this kind of collaborative spreadsheet, but they've done just the very, very, very primitive versions of it. And so we actually get excited about the opportunity to. So in my experience at Intercom, right, analysis was a more and more multiplayer sport. It was very much the case that I would start an analysis, and that could be I'd start a model, I'd start an ad hoc analysis, I would start a report, and I would send it to you, David, or I'd send it to you, Mishti, and I'd say, hey, can you add some component to this, or can you tell me what you think about this, this assumption, or can you, build out the rest of this for me, and then you send it back, and I would, incorporate those changes. Excel doesn't allow for you to do that really in any way, shape, or form, right? Excel, we've all been in the V1, V2, V3, V100, V1 final, V2 final, that whole world. And then Google Sheets is this, just we can do it together, but you only have this one state of it.
Yeah.
And so we get excited about what are some ways that you can start to kind of solve that multiplayer. Right. That kind of that multiplayer nature of analysis is taking place more and more. I guess we kind of think about it across those two factors.
Yeah, so it sounds like if I were to sort of summarize, and you can tell me this is not the right way to think about it if it's not, but if I were to summarize, it sounds like the kind of data ingest and APIs to and from data sources is a big thing that's unsolved in spreadsheets is one, and then maybe the actual workflows for forking and revision history and collaboration, which almost to me sounds almost like a Git type tool for spreadsheets. Are those sort of the two flavors?
Without revealing too much, that's a great summary. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Okay, that's great because it really does start to help us at least frame where spreadsheets are not achieving their full potential, or sort of where they fall short of what people's needs might be. So that's kind of cool. And then, so you've seen these problems up close, working in spreadsheets a lot. And then you were mentioning kind of at Intercom, you were at Intercom for quite a while. What were some of the learnings there? Were you starting to think about this product in your day-to-day there, or were you sort of, how did that kind of process inform what you're building today?
Yeah. So I spent 7.5 years at Intercom, and I led the finance, the analytics teams, the biz ops team there. I think towards the end of my time at Intercom, I knew I wanted to either join a very early stage company again and do kind of the early days again, or I wanted to go and start my own thing. And I had this idea for equals kind of brewing in the back of my head for quite some time. It was probably in there and I had a few other ideas. I would sit down every once in a while and just like actually just write out like what are some of the problems that I've experienced at Intercom. What are the things that I spent way too much time hassling around, and what were just some of the biggest like pain points, and I'd write down ideas. And this one was the one that just kept coming back to me. It just, honestly, probably over the last like year or two of my time there, it just kept coming back. It would go on a run. I'd like go to sleep. I'd wake up. It was like, this is like, I really want to solve this problem. And I think the idea itself, or it just came from an insight of like, actually every time I wanted to create some sort of insight in the business, I always kind of like went back and reverted to my spreadsheet, and I saw people doing that over and over and over again. And, it's how the finance team worked. It's how the analytics team worked. And it was really just what are all the things that I hate about this thing, the spreadsheet, and where do I waste all of my time? What are all the ways that I am, we are horribly inefficient around this tool, and are there some opportunities to solve that? That was kind of like where it came from. And then it just so happens towards the end of my run at Intercom, I actually serendipitously met up with, or kind of reconnected with Intercom's first employee, who's my co-founder now. And we were talking over Zoom and just kind of, again, just catching up. And he had ended up leaving his prior company. And I told him this idea, and it just so happened that he had already been working on something that was very spreadsheet oriented himself. And it was just this like magic, like serendipitous moment. It was like, hey, wow, okay, there's something in the air. Like, this is like, we need to, and within like a month or so, just having kind of continue to talk about it, we were both like, we're all in, let's do it.
That's great. And when you think about this, it seems like there could be, we sort of talked about like the data ingest or the workflow thing. Do you feel like it's best to start and get one of those right, and that's kind of the beginning, and then it expands to the second, or do they both need to exist to begin with? Or how do you think about sort of the sequencing of product development?
Yeah, Ben and I talk about this a lot. So our big kind of mantra right now is we're really trying to build one bet at a time. And, so Ben talks about this in just his experience at the last company he started, and it not working out. Basically what they tried to do was in the last company, they tried to recreate kind of email and build this whole email client from the bottoms up, with solving a lot of the things that they didn't like about email along the way. And I think where they ended up was, at the end kind of, and this is his story, not mine. So, not necessarily kind of knowing which of those bets worked and which ones didn't work, and why they didn't work and why they did work. And I saw this too at Intercom. Like, we would launch, there were times that we would launch changes in the funnel or different versions of different products. And when you make a lot of bets at a time, it's just really hard to disaggregate kind of which one's working, which one's not working, why is it not working, when do I move on to do something else. And so what we're very deliberately kind of taking this one bet at a time. And so of those two things, we're only doing one thing very specifically. And then there's a lot of other places where we could actually innovate on the spreadsheet. Like we could innovate on formulas, on syntax, on functions, on how things get presented, on how you resize things, how you chart things, like you name it, right? There's so many different areas to kind of innovate. And we're very literally not on most of those areas. And the idea is let's know what's working and what's not working when we actually kind of ship a product. And then it just gives us like less, dimensions of freedom upon which we have to kind of like work backwards and track kind of what changed and what didn't change. So right now, that's our philosophy for kind of we haven't gotten a V1 yet out, but when we do.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, have you talked to a lot of people who have, I don't know, been in similar positions using spreadsheets for different things? And I wonder what use cases come up most frequently as like things they think they're spending way too much time on, or things that they wish they could do but can't in a spreadsheet, so they end up hacking some like side way. What kinds of things have you found on that front?
Yeah, so I mean the most common, so spreadsheets are like this huge, Excel, for example, is this huge horizontal product, right? There's so many different jobs within Excel, right? You can use Excel as like a to-do list, as a project management tool, as a Gantt chart creator, as a database, as a CRM, as a calendar, even. Like there's so many different use cases. At least the one that we're focused on is the kind of analysis use case, or using your spreadsheet to, and analysis itself is a broad term, but we have kind of ways of dividing that up too. When we talk to folks that are kind of using it for that, it's all around. A lot of people are building these like bespoke ways of bringing data into either Google Sheets or Excel, and people are spending way too much time trying to get data in, clean data. They're using, our big problem with it all is it always ends up falling on the end user, and it's because like all these integrations, whether it's a Stripe integration with Google Sheets, I don't even know if that exists actually, but like a QuickBooks integration with Google Sheets, well, that's actually owned by QuickBooks, and if you want to do that, you've actually got to use their thing, and if it breaks, it's on you to go figure out how to solve that. And a lot of people are ending up like pinging engineers and like, hey, can you build me this API so that I can use some JavaScript to like pull data down into my Google Sheets thing? And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, this is it's a mess. It's a mess. And so, we're thinking through how do we make that easier for people? How do we make that a lot easier for people?
And how should people think about the landscape of kind of spreadsheet adjacent products? Like we had Tony, who's building Sheetrocks on a bit earlier, to talk about some of this stuff. And then I know people are like talking all about Airtable, and a lot of people are shifting to that. Kind of like in the landscape of people trying to make spreadsheets work better, where do you find yourself fitting in? Or even like how do you think about that breakdown?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, it kind of comes back to like the many jobs of a spreadsheet. And so, we get asked all the time, like, well, how are we different from Airtable? And, Airtable is awesome tool, great company. Actually know a lot of people there, have a ton of respect for them. And they're focused on a totally different use case. Like they're like, I actually use Airtable, and they're great for, basically, I use them as like a database for all of the, at least right now, for all of our like potential beta users and things like that. But that's what they're great at, is like, hey, the spreadsheet as a database, and then you can build apps and kind of workflows on top of that. And then there's like all the other kind of, you could imagine, you could even argue like Coda, Notion, Smartsheets, all those are different use cases as well of kind of spreadsheets. The space we're playing in is really kind of like core analysis and kind of, modeling to a certain extent, but modeling maybe kind of later. And, the folks that are playing in that space, I think, are really just kind of like turning away from the spreadsheet itself, like as a tool. And we're kind of, our thought is actually, no, let's embrace the spreadsheet, and let's actually like build a tool that is like meets people where they are, as opposed to like trying to get them to kind of learn something new or jump over to another kind of medium.
Right. And so with your, kind of thinking about spreadsheets and the analysis focus, and then of course your background in kind of running finance teams, which has a lot of analysis, is that the right way to think about like a vertical to focus around kind of the broad horizontal of spreadsheets, is like analysis, maybe even like financial modeling, or some, certain set of people might have common needs around that? Is that the right way to think about kind of early customers?
Exactly. And like the thing I'd say about, and I actually like just wrote a post about this too. And, I actually think the great finance people, especially in early stage companies, are actually just like the core of their job for quite some time is actually all around analysis. Like all you're doing as a early finance person, and all you should be doing as an early finance person, like your role is not accounting, your role is not payroll, your role is not anything back office related. Your role is, how do I understand this business? How do I understand it to the best of my abilities so that we can all make the best decisions that we possibly can and figure out how to grow this thing. Like that's your job as a finance person in the early days. And so really your job is like, yeah, you're building plans and you're building forecasts, but actually 90% of your job is, I need to unpack this business. I need to dive into the funnels. I need to dive into retention. I need to dive into, every aspect of how this business works. And so, for us, it's really like when I think about, we're trying to think about like, how do we build a tool that best enables that, as opposed to, the early days, like, yeah, you do some modeling and you do, build a plan and you do build a forecast. Right. But again, like that's not that's not the core of what actually a finance person is doing at that stage. You're really just trying to understand the business, because that's what ultimately the modeling and all that stuff is actually, the forecasting is actually way easier once you actually do understand the business. The hard part is actually understanding the business, understanding how it works, analyzing it.
Right. And that sounds actually, it's funny because the topics that you mentioned on understanding the business and like growth funnels and conversion, that actually, a lot of those topics are in common with what like might be traditionally like a growth product team. So I wonder, is that another like adjacent, or is that a similar kind of set of needs that you think that the analysis tools would serve? Totally.
So not to give away too much, but I think there is an opportunity for us to really help, whether it's the first finance, the first operations, the first analytics person, the first, growth oriented kind of, marketer, product person, whatever way, shape, or form it takes in an early stage company, because it does tend to take on different shapes. How do we help them just better, like to the best of their abilities, understand their business? And it's what I did at Intercom. It's kind of what Ben did as well. Ben, my co-founder, even though he ran our growth team, we think we have some. We think we can not only help them give folks a tool to do that, but also actually like really, really kind of help them, unpack and organize and understand their business.
That's super cool. Very, very deep problem. There's a lot. It's a good area to mine for gold.
Yeah, exactly.
So right before we went live, you were sort of talking about just thinking through new ways to talk about what you're working on, or kind of engage people who might be prospects. Do you sort of have already some processes in place, or do you have some hypotheses on how that works, or is that something that maybe we should just like brainstorm on? We could share some of our experience if it's helpful, but we'd love to hear kind of your thoughts and stuff too.
I would love to brainstorm. I'd love ideas. So look, and I'm new to this, so like actually one of the most energizing parts of starting Equals has been, I've spent the last 11 years in Spreadsheets doing analysis, and actually, now I'm like, how do I create content? How do I build a community? How do I find people? It's a totally different job for me. How have I thought about it so far? I'm like very, 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 very much just getting started. And I think at the core of what I want to do over the next, where I want to take this is, I really just want to like help people who are in kind of my position, when I was at Intercom. And so right now I'm trying to write, but I find that to also be pretty challenging and hard. I want to interview people. I want to talk to people, but all again with the spirit of, hey, how do I, my thing was like, as a finance person in an early stage company, it's a very lonely role. Like you often have to say no to people. You often are kind of the one that is like maybe a little bit of a different mindset than everybody else. And so it's just it's hard. it's really hard. So how do we just support the people that are in these positions? How do I take the experience that I had and kind of, help people as much as I possibly can? And that's like where I'm starting from. And then everything else, I think we'll just have to kind of, I don't know. I love ideas on like how to actually get out there and help people.
Yeah. This is the kind of stuff we love to brainstorm all the time. Yeah. So we can just keep it light and easy. We can share some random ideas we might have. We can share stuff that we've done, stuff that we've tried, stuff that seems to work or not work. So I think it's kind of a fun topic. One thing, I guess I'll make a few observations, and I'm of course very arm's length from what you're doing. So you're in the weeds, you know the details of like the customer and the product and what you're imagining. But one it almost sounds like a kind of a too high level to be meaningful. But have you noticed this trend on TikTok of people educating people on Excel?
Yes, I have. I follow a handful of them.
That was so bizarre to me that works, and it's huge.
Yeah, there's some girl that makes like 6 figures off of this, that, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. And I would bet that your experience and anecdotes and skills in Excel, which is, I know, not what you're building, but there's probably that's probably some of your same kind of customers or early users. So I wonder if you just created like a bunch of cool content of like, check out this trick, check out this amazing thing. Cause I'm sure like thousands of them and you don't even realize how cool they are, but cause you just the fish swimming in water, you don't even know what water is. Yeah. But people who are new to finance or new to growth and new to sort of looking at funnels and analysis, there's probably a wealth of information. If you just just had some generative, creative work in that, I bet you could come up with really interesting stuff that would be useful to a lot of people. And it would also help show, there's probably moments in there that would show, okay, here's how you do it in Excel. Here's why it's tricky and nasty in Excel and we wish it were better. And here's a better way you could do it if you had a different tool. So in a sense, it gives you a way to sort of guide an audience from where they are to where you think it should go. And it also gives you opportunity to get feedback on that kind of stuff too.
Cool. Yeah. Do you think TikTok's a good medium or a good channel?
Well, I think it totally depends on the product and the customer and everything. So, I think it's very popular these days for everybody to look at TikTok and be like, wow, it's amazing. Everything's growing there. And I wouldn't have mentioned it except for this bizarre Excel TikTok corner of the world that is not trivial in size that I recently came across. And I'm far from anything of an Excel expert. I don't, I can hack my way around, but I don't really know what I'm doing. And so I think the Excel TikTok phenomenon is something that feels to me like it's the kind of place where you could get a lot of early audience that is, trying to solve these problems. Then you can sort of help both educate in how they're trying to do it and then, sort of solicit feedback and navigate toward a better way that you have in equals.
Totally. There's also I don't know if you saw recently. There's I didn't know this existed either, but there's esports for Excel modeling.
I didn't know that.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's a real thing. So there's a national or global. It's a global competition. I think they do it once a year, and it's they have to work through. I mean, it's next level. I love Excel. I love modeling, and it was an hour and a half. I couldn't watch it all, but they have to answer 500 questions, and it's here's this data, go nuts, and right. They all live recorded, and people watch it.
Right.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because the key question is where are the people who love this, right? Because there's so many miserable investment banking analysts out of college who are just using it because they have to and they don't really care. But where are the people who are this is so cool, look at the things I can learn from a simple spreadsheet, and what are they doing?
Yeah.
And what are they thinking about? Probably, I mean, I'm sure there are. Another thing I was thinking is among the cohort of people who go into sort of analyst jobs at bigger companies like you did or in the financial sector, probably there are people who are super interested in earlier businesses or startups, but they are just well, nothing I know is really that relevant to that world. I've been an equity analyst or I've been working at a bank or something. But kind of the way that, and also just reading your blog posts, the way you talk about kind of the fundamental skills, or what is useful in an early finance hire, or in terms of like looking at the business of an early startup. I wonder if you could, I don't know, like in an interview format, if you talk to other people who were early hires and they were like, literally like, these analyses that I did at XY company were so useful at this startup because like this is how it helped me break down the business in ways that other people didn't, or something. Like kind of like drawing that bridge, I think would be really appealing to a lot of people who would like want to get into tech, but they just don't see how their skills can be applied.
Yeah, totally. I love that idea. And we actually have a similar idea kind of brewing. And one of the things I'm working on now is I'm trying to find, and I'm sure this exists in some way, shape, or form already, but it's something that I'm just genuinely curious about. Is I'm trying to find folks to interview who've been in positions like me at Intercom, and really just trying to understand like what were the big insights that unlocked their growth, and like what were the big, what were the aha moments that they had, and what were the things like we all know about, right? Like the Facebook 7 friends, or I think there's one that's like I think Slack had one too, but those are kind of in my experience, I feel like those are a little bit like they're great, and I'm sure they're real, and also at the same time, like I kind of want like a level deeper of like like some of the like kind of like really hard and not obvious ones, and ones that like you had to kind of like scrape and claw for, and so we're putting together a series of like folks who had kind of like these like real moments or pockets of kind of insights, and how did they get to them, to like what impact they have on their business, how did it work out, just as a way of like inspiration for like other people in these roles. It's like, hey, okay, it's doable, and two, it's actually just like, here's an idea of like how you might unpack your funnel, and here's an idea of like how you might think about approaching this.
I really like the specificity of that too, because I think so much advice is just like way too broad. But I actually was reading, you have great blog posts out there, by the way, the one about like your favorite interview question to ask. Like, what if you just asked that question to people who were really legit and like had proven themselves to be good at a job, but like you could screen share and be like, share your screen and like literally walk us through like what constructing this analysis that ended up being useful was, and like what does that even mean. I think just having a compilation of those would be so instructive for people.
Totally. And then the other thing that we've thought about is like, what if I just screen share my screen and like just go and like dissect a business, and like that would be fun. Like that'd
be so cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I feel like that's a whole genre of like designers do that with Figma, right? Where they open up Figma and then they're just like, here, let me show you how to make a website or a mobile app. And they just like watching the process and then having that embodied like piece of media that can then be shared out, and people can learn about you as an expert at thinking through these. But then it also gives you like just a brand to take into the world to show what's next, or what the problems are, or sort of the solutions that you're providing. So I think it's always helpful if you can just like help people, you create media that is really just you and niche, and it just feels like the thing that you are, and it's not trying to be something else, it's just trying to be you, but it creates as like an extension of that media that's like interesting to people.
Well, this is like firing me up so much right now. I'm like, I'm gonna go and like, right after this.
Me too. I wish I could just walk with this right now. Like, all right, Bobby, screen share.
Yeah, exactly.
So another one that comes to mind is if you had like, even like a few dozen people who were in kind of a similar type of career position, and you kind of mentioned that they're like, it's kind of a lonely job. I wonder if you just like set up a Discord and got like a dozen people who are all in those silos at various companies, but that they then have like a place where they could gather, and you're just like, hey, just come here, and like if you're running into problems, like share a formula, talk about a problem. There's probably somebody else there who's run into it, and you kind of just become like this little sharing learning community. And a side effect of that is like, once you have 12 people all helping each other, then when they have a friend, like, oh, you should come on the Discord, it's really good, like everybody there like is legit, knows their stuff. And then that also helps you start to build an audience for your streaming activities or for your next blog post or for, whatever else, when you want to get like product feedback on like a certain thing, or you have like a few feature ideas and you're like, hey, we're thinking about doing X or Y or Z, which one should we do? And you can just like feel where the energy is because you've got people who care about this already assembled, getting a lot of value from just being part of like your ecosystem day by day.
Totally. I've not used Discord yet, but that is one of the things that I've been, because I love this idea and it's something that I have actually kind of explored. And one of the things I'm actually curious your all's opinions on is I have found that like community is like the hot thing right now. Everybody's talking about how do you build community, and I understand it to a certain extent. Is there also a little bit of like community fatigue? And like one of the things that I started with this exact idea, David, and I pinged folks and I was like, hey, do you want to join like a Slack community with me? And we can, and a lot of the responses I got were, hey, I'm actually in like 4 Slack communities already, and I'm trying not to be in anymore. And, I get pinged I actually close my Slack because it's super distracting. And, and so I wonder, like, it feels like we're like maybe in this like weird kind of place where we're swinging between like, actually there might be a little bit of like community overload. Is that like, how does that land?
Yeah. I mean, I think
I feel like leading with the content might help solve that a little bit, because if you're like, here are these awesome deep dives and like we're just going to go so deep into process and it's like just really interesting content that people will naturally gravitate to and maybe start commenting on or like engaging with it or you in a way that's like coming from them. And then if you're like, yeah, by the way, there's this Discord where we sometimes chat about this stuff, instead of kind of like making it from like nothing, where people are like, what am I going to do there? Or like, what are the kinds of things concretely that people are interested in or discussing? It's like harder to commit to something like that, I think. Because I agree with you, it's like such a buzzword now. So you don't know what to expect at all when someone says like community for X, unless I think you've like seen examples of it playing out in like videos or tweets or like somewhere where you see people talking to each other.
Yeah.
I think also like the specificity of like what this, I think I wouldn't even call it a community. I'd just be like, here's a group where we all get together because we're working through like Excel problems together. Yeah. Like if you're into that, great. If you're not, like no big deal. But if people have enough energy to transition from Excel to equals, there's also similar frustration with the existing tools. And there's like problems that need to be solved that people can't get solved. And so if you can be the place, like with a lot of specificity, like I wouldn't be like, oh, we're a community for people who have spreadsheets. Like that's probably too general. Or even like maybe it's like, so I do think like the idea of just doing like a general community is probably, there's like fatigue around that idea. But I mean, I just look, across the room, my wife organizes a community and they get, it's like for generalists, and they get tons and tons of applications and they have to like write essays and stuff to get in. And it's kind of like, but it's very specific purpose for a specific type of person who wants to learn about specific types of things and meet other people like that. So I don't think like there's a general, like, I don't think there's like I think community fatigue without a purpose, that's going to be hard. Yeah. But I think if people, if people know what they're expecting to get and if it serves a need they have, and I think people have like all kinds of niche needs that are underserved, like I think it shouldn't feel like a grind to get, some people, maybe half the people you meet are not interested or they're in too many communities, they don't have more time for this. Maybe they want something that's posed as like professional development for the first employee in finance at a company. Yeah. And that's like a very specific niche, and you mentioned that it feels like siloed and a little bit of like a lone wolf type role. And so if you just get 12 of those people together, maybe you even put up an application and you filter people and you use your taste or your personal network to find a dozen people, get 12 great people together who really want this and who value it and will be able to like exchange and help each other. I don't think people will be fatigued on that if it feels new and fresh and specific to them.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that makes that is perfectly right. And I think that some people I think there is a little bit of many people have gone in not that direction, and you end up in these. I mean, I've been in it myself, where you end up in these Slack groups where it's just okay, nobody's kind of talking, it's kind of idle. Somebody will say something every once in a while, or it's not clear kind of which direction I'm supposed to go in here, and I think there is still a lot of that, and I think you're right. I think it needs to come from a place, and it goes back to kind of like what I was alluding to earlier. It's like I really just want to help people in these roles and leverage what I've done, and also learn from people. And if that authentically comes across, then I think it can be a different it can be a different type of community, or it can actually work.
Yeah. I also think of do you know Mario Gabriele and his S1 Club?
I don't know. I'm gonna check that out.
I just linked to one of them. So this has become a whole thing and gotten a lot of momentum. But in the beginning, they were just a bunch of kind of, I don't know, equity analysts interested in looking at businesses that had filed an S1. So they got a bunch of people together, and they would paste the S1 into a Google Doc, and all kind of mark it up and comment on it together and stuff. And then everyone would write a section of the analysis, and they would publish this analysis of the business that was about to IPO. And
that's awesome.
I was just thinking of that because it reminded me of your comment of you could just screen share and dive into a business or something. I bet there would be maybe people that you could gather around you who love doing this kind of thing. And instead of it being sort of an amorphous thing where we all really like this and deal with issues, but maybe they're not exactly sure how to engage or what to share in your group. It could be which 4 people are in. This week we're gonna do a deep dive into XYZ company, and using whatever information is online, and we're just gonna stream ourselves on Excel. I don't know, 2 hours. We have to come up with a story of this business or something. I think that'd be. I think people would get excited about that, and it reminds me of what Mario did with just assembling these people, and then whatever your output is, the internet at large would get a lot out of consuming that. I'm sure it would make the rounds on Twitter or whatever, and it could turn into something or not. This thing would be fun.
I think that's awesome. I'm really excited. I'm energized. This has been super helpful.
Cool. And another thing that I'll share, just because it's very fresh for us, is this show's called Building in Public, and we often like to talk about things as early as possible, but I don't think that we have really practiced it ourselves as well as we should until this week. So we built this tool that we're using, Highlighter, and we built it as all kinds of full-featured host a live TV show in a browser, and we use it every day, and we host these shows, and we host and create a bunch of videos and media together. But we also realized that there's a lot of people who want this core highlighting tool, but maybe they created their video elsewhere. Maybe they already have a whole production process. Maybe they are using Zoom to create the video, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of brainstorming, even literally started this Monday. And we were actually, there's a lot of people who love highlighting, but they didn't always come to Highlighter to make the video. Can we just make a really thin version of that? And so I'll find the tweet. I don't know, Misty, if you have it handy, if you can share it while I describe it. But I just shared a tweet last night, kind of because we'd sort of been brainstorming this as a team, I think starting Monday. And so I shared a tweet last night that we kind of decided that we wanted to probably do something like this because we just felt there's just a lot of energy around it and people are asking. But then I kind of posed it as hey, we're thinking about this. I forget exactly what I said, but it was kind of low key. I said what if you could upload any video you made, e.g. a Zoom recording, etc., to a website to transcribe and tweet from the highlights? Would this be useful?
Yeah.
And so we kind of, that's I would say our first real Building in Public, where we kind of had an idea on Monday, tweeted this on Wednesday. We've already been through lots of design cycles on it. Mishti shared some wireframes already. We're going to share some more wireframes coming up after this. But we're deep in the process of both designing and building this. And now we have a bunch of people who've said, oh, I love that idea. I'd like to take it in this direction. I'd like to use it for this reason instead. And this just feels like such a great way to both engage early potential users and get feedback on what we're thinking. And, it's not all of this like building in a kind of, in an internal and then have a magic externalization day, but kind of treat it really more like a process where we're engaging with people who are, constituents, potential early users from early on. And so we're going to share out, we have some new designs we've been working on all morning. We're going to share those out this afternoon. Cool. People are going to say, love this, I hate this, I wish it did this instead. And like, that's, I think, the kind of good stuff. So, that's the reason I share that. The reason I share that anecdote is because I think, as much as we focus, sort of our show is called Building in Public, and we do a lot in public. I think we really got down to the reality of building in public just this week, and it feels really like fresh and everybody's energized about it. So I wonder if there's like a sliver of what you're thinking about with equals that you could just pose a question like, hey, we're thinking about this. Who else is interested in this kind of thing? Is there any like sliver? It doesn't have to be the full vision, doesn't have to be even a product that you're currently working on, but just like questions you might have or that might interest or excite people around the kinds of topic areas you're interested in.
Totally. I love that. I mean, I think there's and I haven't even myself figured out like my full philosophy on building in public versus not. And like, I think the idea that like, sharing everything that you're doing and somebody's going to kind of like rip you off or, beat you to it. Like, I think that's actually like, I don't think that's true. I think that's, right. And at the same time, like there is anxiety around it, right? Like it is kind of scary. Like you have this idea and it's your thing, and it's like I don't know if I want to put it out there, and not yet. But I think you're right. Like I love this this idea of like posing kind of small questions at least to start off with, of like like that allude to kind of like what you're building. I think that's really interesting. One random, like I'm sure you all have thought about this, one random idea that popped in my head was like, what about like there is kind of a cool use case of like if I'm watching a YouTube video or a Zoom video or something like that, just being able to like select a section, literally highlight it, and then tweet it. Like I'm sure, I don't know if that is something you're thinking about building, but that would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. So I love that feedback. Thank you for sharing it. This is actually something that we got as part of our prompt last night. We got people discussing. One in particular was talking about this use case where he wanted to be able to do highlighting while he's consuming things. And so we're sort of in a bit of a tension, let's say here. I'm actually pulling it up right now. We're in a tension right now of how much do we enable curation and highlighting from video that you created and are uploading and then curating versus how much is it like anything that you're consuming can be highlighted. And we've sort of, we started Highlighter with the idea of like, creating more information density around content. It doesn't have to be video. It could be a book. It could be a website. It could be a podcast. It could be anything, but creating like really tight density of information because it's like much more, we're all busy. We all have tons of stuff. If we could just like distill it to those short bits and get all the punch out of it. So yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I appreciate the feedback. And it's actually also came up as part of our discussion. And I think there's like tons of great stuff we could do around that. But our first rev is going to be focused on more like the create and upload video. But I think we'll get to probably stuff, probably there's stuff around consumption that would also be very helpful to people. I think we have to figure out like how do we prioritize, which forms of consumption and which is it like Chrome desktop? Is it mobile web? Is it a mobile app? Like
a lot of sub questions within that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, because we have it live right now. Like I just made some highlights on the side. So I have not been live tweeting them, but we found ourselves kind of like manually doing this with trying to break down video content before using just like Command Shift 5. So we built this like highlighting tool into here for like live experiences that are hosted here and like streamed out. But yeah, now thinking about like just the concept of like breaking down an incredibly opaque piece of like video media that's just like this block that's an hour long. Like, how do you extract elements from that and let people kind of curate?
Totally. Well, like, I mean, I'm no expert in this, but like, you know, I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll think like 10 seconds of it are brilliant, and I have no way of like even just sending that to a friend, right? Like, I think you can clip, but like, I'm not good at that. I don't know. This is like, if there was something easier, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me on. This was awesome. This is really fun.
This has been super fun. I know we're at the end of the hour, so we don't want to hold you over the schedule. But thanks for joining us, and thanks for sharing all about what you're building at Equals. We would love to be helpful or involved to whatever extent we can as you're thinking through like how you want to talk about it, how you want to engage people with it. If there's anything, anything at all.
More on like making videos with like, different interviews and stuff. If any of this would be like fun or useful to play with, we can chat more about that too.
I would love that. Yeah, that would be great. And right back at you, if I can be helpful in any way, shape, or form as you all are building Highlighter. Honestly, this is like the stuff I know well is like analysis. I know how to fundraise. I know, like, so anything that I can be helpful.
Awesome.
Happy to help in any way, shape, or form.
Thanks so much, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Mitch. It was great to meet you. Bye.